Hi guys, how you all doing? Welcome back to another video on the channel. Here we are, Matchday -1 ahead of Champions League Matchday 3, Newcastle against Benfica here at St James's Park tomorrow night. I'm here at St James's Park right now, late afternoon, because Eddie Howe will be holding his pre-match news conference at 4:30, followed later this evening by the Benfica manager Jose Mourinho. Now they're arriving Benfica later on this evening. They're training back in Lisbon rather than training here, so that's why his press conference is later. So I'll have plenty from both of those later on in the video. I was also at training this morning at Newcastle. I've got some news from that as well, but before I get into all of that, if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe, hugely appreciated if you do. As ever, leave your comments and thumbs up below to engage, and I'll try to get back to some of you later on. But anyway, yeah, so into the video. I was up at training session this morning, picked up some video footage from that. I didn't notice at the time, it wasn't until I was walking away, because I was only there for the first 15 minutes, but there was no Tonali at training this morning. So it'll be interesting to hear what Eddie Howe's got to say at his press conference today. Word is that he's got an illness. It didn't sound like it was anything too, from what I was hearing, to worry about too much. Perhaps Eddie will have a bit more after his news conference in the next hour here at St James's Park. But no sign of Tonali. Everyone else pretty much was there though, out with Livramento, Lewis Hall, Johan Wissa. No sign of either of those trio, who of course are all rehabbing back to fitness, having suffered injuries in the last few weeks. But Voltemada was there, Bruno was there, Joe Linton was there, you know, Chow, Botman, Nick Pope, most of the other, Danbar, most of the other, the main players were there. But obviously Tonali's the main one. He's your best player. I think we can all agree on that now. Now that Isak's gone, he probably was your best player last season, but yeah, God, what a fall from grace for him. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, that's a concern in Tonali. So let's see what Eddie's got to say at his news conference. What else? Nick Pope's up today. Nick Pope will be speaking. I brought you the news last week that he had agreed an extra year's extension on his contract. That was an agreement that was made when Newcastle qualified for the Champions League. So he took up that option. So his contract now ends summer 2027. So he's got another year left. So we'll hear from him tonight. And we'll hear from Jose Mourinho as well, who you know, he's got a really poor record here at St James's Park. He says he loves coming here just due to his connections with Sir Bobby Robson. He almost came here as one of his staff, his interpreter, one of his assistants back in, God, what year would that have been? 2001 or something, 2000. He almost came here, but he decided to go off and be a manager in his own right. And he said this has always had a spot in his heart. I remember actually a game a few years ago, I think, when Newcastle played either Spurs or Man United, and he was the manager, and he came here and he went down to visit the statue, the Sir Bobby Robson statue, just at the corner of the stadium there. Interested to see if he does that later on this evening. But yeah, he called himself in an interview with Sky Sports about 4 or 5 years ago the Little Magpie, because he says he's got such a soft spot for the club and he feels a connection every time he comes here. But I tell you what, his record isn't good, is it? He'd never won a Premier League game managing Chelsea, Manchester United or Spurs until the last time he was here at Spurs, July 2020, and he was in charge during COVID, and Spurs came here and won 3-1, I think it was. So anyway, we'll hear from him later on as well. Just in terms of my views as to what's going on at the moment, look, I think probably, and I feel like you guys are already sort of coming round and accepting that this might be one of those seasons where you're not able to go again. You're not able to finish top 4, top 5, qualify for the Champions League. You might just have to enjoy it. And for me, you know, if you finish top 8, top 7, top 8, it's probably a good season. If you get into Europe in some way, whether that's Europa or the Europa Conference. I just think with the amount of games you play, and the squad for me still isn't big enough. I know it was a feeling that you had 2 players for every position. Of course, Isak then went and Wissa got injured, but I actually think you probably need more than 2 players per position. You know, you've got Lewis Hall and Livramento both out at the moment, and that now leaves you just Trippier and Dan Burn having to fill in at left back. Yes, you've got Emil Kraft there, but you know, a lot to ask him when he's not played much football over the last few years. But you know, you need the signings to hit the ground running. Now, along the road at Sunderland, I have to say we've seen that. I was there on Saturday, and we see the likes of Mukiele and Xhaka and Siddiqui, and these guys have come in and really hit the ground running. And while Voltemada has, I think, an unbelievable goal from him on Saturday, and he scored a couple of good ones already. His penalty was ridiculous a couple of weeks ago against Forest. You know, you're looking at Elanga, he's not got going yet at all, has he? No goals, no assists. I'm not really too sure what he is at the moment. He's playing wide right, should he be playing wide left? He's rapid, but it looks like he's got a bit to go to try and work out how he fits into Eddie Howe's style, and of course that's something they'll be working on in the training ground. Of course, remember Anthony Gordon got off the sticky patch when he started, and it took him a while for him to really find his groove. That might be the case for Elanga, but sadly, when you're playing Premier League on a weekend, Champions League midweek, Premier League Champions, you've not got time. You've got to hit the ground running. Now, the good news is Botman and Chow look really good together. I think that's your centre-back partnership moving forward. They're really good. They're really impressive. Malik Chow. Botman looks like he's getting back to his best. Albeit they'll be disappointed with, one or two of the goals at the weekend against Brighton. I think they're a good partnership. And you still arguably, in my opinion, have one of the best, if not the best, midfield in the Premier League. But I think when you go away that was just not a good fixture for Newcastle to have on Saturday away to Brighton after an international break. Had that been Brighton at home or anyone at home, really, I think it would have been different. I just think going down there was a really tough place to go and get a result when you've got such a bad record there. I think I was reading that in the 17 games Newcastle played Brighton since both clubs were promoted back in 2021 or whenever it was. Sorry, it was before that, wasn't it? 2018. The 17 games, Newcastle have only won 2 of them. So that's in their head before they go down there. So yeah, look, I think looking at this game, and it'll be interesting to hear what both managers say, but looking at this game, I just think you've got better players. You do have better players. The atmosphere will help. You look at the Portuguese league; it's getting lesser. The Premier League's getting stronger. You're signing top players, the best players across Europe and beyond. And clubs like Benfica and Sporting Lisbon and Porto are getting their players poached. So I was looking at their squad. Newcastle have got the better players. If you turn up on the night, you should win this game. Yes, Mourinho adds a bit more spice to the occasion, but I just feel there has to come a point where you're like, we've got better players, we'll go out and we'll do this. Now, you've probably got better players than Brighton, but I just think that was probably a mental thing on Saturday. And you were unlucky. You were going for the winner when Brighton scored their winner, but it just took too long to get going in that first half. It was just the team were just off it in the first half. And I think sadly we're going to see some performances like that, games like that are frustrating this season when you're having to play Champions League and then throwing all the amount of players who are on international duty as well. It's really difficult. I think what will avoid Eddie Howe will be the fact that neither Chow or Botman got picked, so he had the 2 strong centre-halves who've had a good break, but then you still conceded 2 goals. But then that probably wasn't helped by the fact that midfield 3, Bruno, Joelinton and Tonali had travelled long distances. Tonali didn't actually land back into Newcastle until I think it was 8 or 9 o'clock on Thursday night, and then of course he trained for a couple hours Friday morning and then was on a flight back to Brighton in the afternoon. It's just not ideal in terms of preparation, all that flying and the lack of rest. Yes, he was given a bit longer off over in Italy, but I just think you need a bit more time here in the country, in the UK, in Newcastle, just to get your mind and body into the right position. So look, it's going to be one of those seasons. I think you're going to have to realise that, but I think you guys probably are already. It's so difficult when there's so many fixtures. You've just got to hope that you keep the injuries to a minimum. Are they a minimum at the moment? No. Key positions, Livramento, Hall would be in your starting 11, and of course Wissa would be given Voltemada break in certain games. You could play one game, one the other. You could play Wissa off to the side. He just gives you so many options moving forward. It's not helped by the fact Elanga's not playing well, Barnes isn't playing well, Gordon's been playing in fits and starts. You need to get those 3 firing, and I think if you do, then you've got a real a team in your hands. But when the wingers aren't performing, it's difficult. Anyway, I'm going to go in the press conferences, have a bit more afterwards, but I thought I'd just come and have a little chat with you guys beforehand, having been at the training session earlier. Okay guys, more to come. Cheers. So Eddie Howe has just confirmed, I'm sure you guys all have heard by now here in the media room at St James's Park, he's confirmed that Sandro Tonali does have an illness, and it's touch and go as to whether he will be able to play against Benfica here at St James's Park tomorrow night. So that, of course, would be a huge blow. He is Newcastle's best player. However, I feel very much like the midfield three at some stage are going to have to get a rest in certain games. Perhaps this might be a chance to. You don't want to rest him against Benfica, but at least he'll be fresh to go again, you would expect, on Saturday against Fulham, and in the cup tie against Spurs next week. So Eddie might start having to rotate things anyway, given the amount of games that the players are playing. So this might be an obvious decision to do that. The good news is Ramsey back at the weekend came on, looked sharp. He's back fit again, and Lewis Miley, of course, with the setup for Voltemade for his goal. And look, you would suggest that both of those players probably deserve an opportunity, but it's just not Sandro Tonali that you would want to be missing for that game. But he says he's touch and go. They'll give it every hour in the hope that he's available to play. Let's wait and see. I just got the impression the way Eddie was speaking there, though, that it's going to be probably difficult for him to make it for the match tomorrow. On top of that, he said he's frustrated about the start to the season. He feels there's good parts there. They're working at it. He doesn't think it's going to be like last season where it was a really, really slow start. But he says there are mitigating factors due to the fact that the summer that Newcastle had, the new players that have come in, the amount of games they're trying to contend with. He says, look, we just need to try and get some wins on the board and try and get some sort of consistency to our performances, which they've not seen in recent times. So look, it feels very much like they've got a bit between their teeth. They want to make up for the weekend, and look, I've got a real feeling Newcastle will turn Benfica over here tomorrow night at St James's Park. I just feel it's the sort of game that could really probably help Newcastle. Yes, I think Benfica will come and make it difficult, but I think if you get the early goal, you could score a couple of 2 or 3 goals here tomorrow and get faces smiling again. So that's it from Eddie Howe in the news conference. We'll hear what Jose's got to say later on this evening. Cheers, guys. Thanks.